when perfect love touches a sinful, dark earth. Perfect love is perfectly violated. But in fact, perfect love triumphs. That's what Easter's about. But there's no shortcut to Easter. You've got to go through the darkness, down, hit rock bottom before you can come up. And that's the Catholic instinct. And that's why we put the body of the Lord on the cross. All right, so the incarnation. This then in turn leads to a sacramental sense of the universe, that flesh, that matter glows with God. Any nature, the planets, matter glows with God, a sacramental sense of the universe, that the whole of the creation has an overflowing from the abyss of perfect love that we call the Trinity, that the whole of the creation somehow glows with the divine. The divine is not contained in the creation. That's paganism. But what the Catholic eye says is that matter, God is not contained in matter, but the matter that he has taken, the flesh of things, in fact glows with the presence and the power of God for the eye that sees. All right, then that sense of the sacramentality of things, that everything is a sign of God for the person who can see rightly, that then generates that sense of sacrament in the church. And the prime sacrament is the church. That sign which we can see and taste and touch and hear of something which is invisible. In other words, the presence and power of God. So the church itself is the body of Christ. I suppose if there's anything that's most distinctively Catholic, any way of describing the church, it would be that, the Pauline description of it as the body of Christ. It's a most extraordinary description of the church. I mean, the church seen from one angle can look like just another clapped-out human institution. But is it? And there are plenty of people who would reduce the church, and again I think we need to be careful of this, who can reduce the church to a sociological phenomenon, a human construction. And therefore everything in the life of the church is reduced either to commerce or politics. Now, is that adequate? The Catholic answer is no. You're seeing a tiny sliver of reality and you're saying that's all there is. To the eye that sees more, the church is the body of Christ. It is flesh, and it's wounded flesh. The body of Christ is always wounded, but the scars shine like the sun. The church is always a mess. It was from day one. There was no golden age. Sometimes you get the impression there was a golden age way back there and something went wrong. And then all of a sudden we began to run downhill, and we've been running downhill at a great rate ever since. Nonsense. You've only got to read the letters of St. Paul to see what a mess the church was from day one. There was blood on the floor. And there always will be. The question is not, is the church a mess? Of course it is. Have you got the eye to perceive the magnificence at the heart of the mess? And the magnificence of the heart of the mess is not, the architecture and art of the Vatican, or your bank balance in the diocese. The magnificence of the heart of the mess is the presence of the risen Christ. If you don't see him there, all you're left with is a putrefying body, a corpse. But if you do see him there, then you see the body of Christ, and you can actually learn to love the church. That's a distinctively Catholic utterance too. What is it? You can't love, it seems to me, a human institution. You might be loyal to it or devoted to it or, follow this football team or that. But when you talk about love, it's a different kind of response. But what does it mean to love the church? You can only love the church, I think, if you see the magnificence at the heart of the mess. Again, the matter of the church glows with the presence of the risen Christ. And without that, all we're left with is the corpse. Because of this incarnational and sacramental sense, which is so distinctively Catholic, the visual matters in a very particular way in the Catholic Church. In Protestant Christianity, the organ that matters most is the ear. And the ear does matter. Faith does come by hearing. But on the sensorium, for the Catholic, the eye is more important than the ear. You need both, but the eye comes first for the Catholic. What you see and how you see. Again, you've got to learn how to see. Think of the story of the road to Emmaus. They're on their way. Jesus comes and walks beside them. Do they see him? Of course they see him physically, but they don't see him. They need to move from one kind of seeing to another kind of seeing. And that's the true journey that they're on, not physical, but at that point of moving from one kind of seeing to another. All right, so that's the kind. First of all, there is the physical seeing. And if I think again of my years in the Vatican, the art and architecture there is catechesis, and it's powerful. I walked out my front door, and there was the cupola of Michelangelo. And it bowled you over, and it was meant to bowl you over. But what's being said by all of that? You're made to feel tiny. When you walk into St. Peter's, you're made to feel small, but you're also made to feel very grand. And this is a very Catholic understanding of who God is, who we are, and how the two relate. God is unspeakably grand. And a church like the Vatican Basilica speaks of that grandeur. But this unspeakably grand God stoops down to pick us up like a little child and to draw us close to his cheek, so that we are very small, and we're made to feel very small, but we're not made to feel insignificant. We're not, as it were, abolished. We're made to feel very grand because of what they call the divine condescension. God stoops down, and God makes us grand. He is unspeakably grand, and he shares something of that grandeur with us as he stoops down to pick us up. And that's what the art and architecture is all about. You're meant to be overwhelmed, bowled over, but you're also made to feel, You see exactly the same thing in the great church in Istanbul, Constantinople, Hagia Sophia. It thrusts upwards hugely the majesty of God, but then those great shallow domes seem to be like flying saucers descending on the earth. And that's the God who is unspeakably majestic, but again, comes down to pick us up. So it's that sense of tension or paradox that's at the heart of our perception of God and how God relates to us. In this world of the visual, this world of the eye, ritual matters. I think it's one of the reasons why Catholic funerals often have a particular and distinctive power about them. It's the power of ritual. I remember my own father's funeral. I was deeply apprehensive about how I would go with it. The death of a parent is a unique experience. But what I found as the Mass began and unfolded was the power of the ritual to sustain and to soothe and to bring a kind of peace. In other words, for us, it's not just words. You go to a lot of other funerals and all you get are words. Speech after speech after speech after speech after speech. That's not what we do. Fundamental to what we do is ritual. Now, this is crucial in a culture which I think is by and large de-ritualised. I happen to think in our schools, for instance, we have to initiate the young into a ritual culture. Because the culture itself, more generally, doesn't do it. All right, so we're not on about words, we're on about action. And even if you look at our liturgy, where ritual has been in some ways diminished, and I think we need to be very attentive to that, that the diminishment of ritual in our public worship is not necessarily a creative thing at all. Whatever about the older form of the Mass, now known as the extraordinary form, it was highly ritualised, probably to a fault. But whatever about that, we need to be careful that we don't diminish the power of ritual and misunderstand our true strength as the Catholic Church. Because our true strength, it seems to me, lies precisely at that point of ritual action, properly understood and properly enacted.